The Great Gatsby, Chapter 1. First notice, who is this dedicated to? That's number 2 on your annotation sheet. You should know who Zelda is. It's a page for Chapter 1. Chapter 1, we notice a lot of blue here. Blue is an unhappy, depressed, or a moody kind of a feeling. So see if you pick up on that as we read this chapter. Here we are. We start off with our narrator talking, and this is Nick Carraway, and he is getting off of the train station. And this section is just going to give us a little information about him. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I'm still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I've come to the admission that it has a limit. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a certain sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. So, what you're supposed to annotate here is, what is this advice that Nick's father has given him? So if we look over here, it's just remember that everybody hasn't had the same advantage that you have had growing up. So he lived a privileged childhood. And then up here, he says, remember that fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth, and that reserving judgments is a matter of hope. So give everyone a chance. And this is why so many people do like him. Recognize your own privilege. Don't judge others. And that's what he's trying to say, is that he's trying to live by that. And so he's come back here, but he has been living this riotous life. It's been pretty busy with privileged glimpses into the human heart, and he wants no more of that. He kind of wants to change his path a little bit. Only Gatsby was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes from 10,000 miles away. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which is not likely I shall ever find again. Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It's what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. So, how does he feel about Gatsby? He kind of admires him, guys. He admires Gatsby. Gatsby, he refers to him right here as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away, as if he has some way of reaching people, but not really letting people know who he is. And that is what you see here. He affects people from a distance. Then we have this, seems a little ominous over here, that it is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. So Gatsby's fate was not his own fault, is sort of what it says here. Gatsby is sort of preyed on by something. We're going to come back to this at the end of the book. I graduated from New Haven in 1915, and a little later participated in that delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War. I enjoyed the counter-raid so thoroughly I came back restless. Instead of being the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seemed like a ragged edge of the universe, so I decided to go east and learn the bond business. Everyone I knew was in the bond business, so I suppose it could support one more single man. It was a matter of chance that I should have rented a house next to one of the strangest communities in North America. It was on that slender, riotous island, which extends itself due east of New York, and where there are, among other natural curiosities, two unusual formations of land. 20 miles out into the city, a pair of enormous eggs, identical in contour, jut out into the great wet barnyard of the Long Island Sound. I lived at West Egg. Across the bay, the white palaces of the fashionable East Egg glittered among the water, and the history of the summer really begins on the evening I drove over there to have dinner with the Tom Buchanans. Daisy was my second cousin once removed, and I'd known Tom in college. So we just got a whole lot of information on this page. The first thing we know is that Nick served in World War I. And when he came back, he was a little bit restless, and he's decided to go into the bond business, and that is this business that the career he's trying to make for himself. This is Gatsby's house right here, and Gatsby lives in West Egg. West Egg is old money. So here we have Gatsby, and this is Nick's house that he's renting for the summer. So they are neighbors, as you can see. We have this theme of geography right here, where we know that this is the Long Island Sound, and that we have the two eggs that jut out into the Long Island Sound, and that is East Egg and West Egg. We know that this book starts with his trip to visit the Tom Buchanans, and that is Tom and Daisy Buchanan. Daisy is his second cousin. Tom is his old friend from college, and the two of them got married. We also have this theme of the American dream over here when we're talking about him rising up and in the bond business and making something of himself after the war. And so it happened on that warm, windy evening, I went to see two old friends who I scarcely knew at all. Tom had changed since his New Haven years. While we were never intimate, I always had the impression that he approved of me and wanted me to like him with some harsh, defiant wistfulness of his own. We talked for a few minutes on a sunny porch. I got a nice place here. It belonged to Domain, the oil man. We'll go inside. So if you take a look at this place, this is Tom and Daisy's house. It's a palace, right? Super, super nice. Here's Nick again. Here's Tom. So if you want to label them, if that helps you to label them, Tom and Nick. And here we are at Tom's place. Tom, I've got a nice place here. Just totally bragging on himself, mentioning that it used to belong to an oil guy. So he's really snobbish. He thinks very highly of himself. And that's about what you got on this page. When we go inside, and here we see lots of things. We have this yellow color predominating. So maybe you want to look up what yellow means. We have Daisy. This is Daisy lounging on the couch. And this is her friend Jordan, who is also lounging on the couch. Jordan is our golf professional. Daisy is just Tom's wife. Notice that she's wearing white here. What does white stand for? Think about that whole emptiness idea and selfishness. I think you might see that play out in the scene. We also have this color of the carpet here. The carpet here is pink. Red in your story means violent, danger. Let's see if there's any hue or tendency of violence or danger as we go through the section. So the ladies are lounging, and she's like, I'm paralyzed with happiness when she sees him. Miss Baker, I've heard it said that Daisy's murmur was only to make people lean towards her, an irrelevant criticism that made it no less charming. I stopped off in Chicago on my way east. 12 people send their love. Do they miss me? Oh, the whole town is desolate. He's really being a little sarcastic here. But she wants to know if everybody misses her out in the east. And he continues the kind of joke. He's like, yeah, all the cars have left the rear wheel painted black as a mourning wreath, and there's a persistent wail along the night on the North Shore. How gorgeous. Let's go back tomorrow, Tom. You ought to see the baby. I'd like to. She's asleep. She's 3 years old. Haven't you seen her? Never. Well, you ought to see her. What are you doing, Nick? I'm a bondman. Who with? I told him. I've never heard of him. You will if you stay in the East. Oh, I'll stay in the East. Don't you worry. I'll be a goddamn fool to live anywhere else. Absolutely. I'm stiff. I've been lying on that sofa for as long as I can remember. Well, don't look at me. I've been trying to get you to New York all afternoon. No, thanks. I'm absolutely in training. So let's look at some of the things that just happened here. First of all, we have Daisy just totally focused on herself and the people missing her out east. She mentions her daughter here, but she doesn't know if Nick has seen her daughter or not, which I think is a little strange. Most mothers know if a relative has visited before. So here, and then you have, Daisy trying to make the small talk with her cousin Nick, and Tom just butts in and just takes over the conversation. Jordan over here has just risen from the couch, and she's so stiff from laying all day, and she's offered a drink, and she's like, no, I'm absolutely in training. So I guess her training consists of laying on the couch. And then Tom makes a smart aleck remark about her. You are. How you ever get anything done is beyond me. Now she's talking to Nick. You live in West Egg? I know somebody there. I don't know a single. You must know Gatsby. And Daisy goes, Gatsby? What Gatsby? Time to eat. Tom Buchanan compelled me from the room as though he were moving a checker to another square. Why candles? In 2 weeks, it'll be the longest day in the year. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it. She's just making this lightheaded conversation with Nick. We ought to plan something. All right, what do we plan? What do people plan? Oh, look at it. I heard it. You did it, Tom. I know you didn't mean to, but you did do it. That's what I get for marrying a brute of a man, a great big hulking physical specimen of a, I hate that word, hulking, even in kidding. Hulking. So what's she doing? She's sort of like teasing him, but she's also egging him on because he doesn't like it. She also lets Nick know that Tom, her husband, hurt her little finger. She's just here trying to get all sorts of attention. But here they are, all awkwardly sitting around the table. Tom doesn't look very happy. Nick looks a little confused, but Daisy and Jordan, they're just carrying on like it's all right. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy. Can't you talk about crops or something? So Nick is just trying to change the subject. He says, I meant nothing particular by this remark, but it was taken up in an unexpected way. Civilization's going to pieces. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by this man Goddard? Why, no. Well, it's a fine book. Everyone ought to read it. It's this idea that if we don't look out, the white race will be utterly submerged. It's all scientific stuff. It's been proved. Tom's getting very profound. He reads deep books with long words in them. What was that word well, these books are scientific, and this fellow, he's worked the whole thing out. It's up to us, who are the dominant race, to watch out, or those other races will have control of things. We've got to beat them down. You ought to move to California. This idea that we're Nordics and that we produced all the things that go to make civilization, science, art, and all that. Do you see? And now the phone starts ringing. And with the phone ringing, and he just got on this racist tirade, it says there was something pathetic in his concentration, as if his complacency, more acute than old, was not enough to him anymore. And we see him get up from the table, and he leaves when the phone rings. So he's in the middle of this conversation where he's talking about this book that he just loves, which is, by the way, pretty racist. And he gets up and leaves the room. I love seeing you at my table, Nick. You remind me of a rose, of an absolute rose. Doesn't he? An absolute rose. She was only extemporizing, but a stirring warmth flowed from her as if her heart was trying to come out to you, concealed in one of those breathless, trilling words. Please excuse me. So she doesn't look happy here anymore. So she kept trying to talk, but she looks unhappy about something. We don't know what. So she's leaving the room, and we have Jordan and Nick left alone, and we can see in the shadows Daisy and Tom in the other room. Shh. This Mr. Gatsby you spoke of is my neighbor. Don't talk. I want to hear what happens. Is something happening? You mean to say you don't know? I thought everybody knew. So something's going on. They're trying to eavesdrop. Why, Tom's got some woman in New York. Got some woman? She might have had the decency not to telephone him at dinner time, don't you think? And now they're coming back in. It couldn't be helped. I looked outdoors for a minute, and it was very romantic outdoors. There's a bird on the lawn singing away. It's romantic, isn't it, Tom? Very romantic. And then we have this. For a moment, the last sunshine fell with romantic affection upon her glowing face. The glow faded, each light deserting her with lingering regret. So we can kind of see that as this phone starts ringing again, that Daisy's happiness fades again. If it's light enough after dinner, I want to take you down to the stables. And this phone starts ringing again, which totally ruins everything. So she came back trying to be happy. Phone's ringing. Things are getting out of control. Nick knows about this other woman. Jordan knows. Tom, of course, knows. So he was conscious of wanting to look squarely at everyone, yet avoid all eyes. I doubt if even Miss Baker, who seemed to have mastered a certain hearty skepticism, was able utterly to put the fifth guest's shrill, metallic urgency out of mind. The horses, needless to say, were never mentioned again. Who's this fifth guest? That's right, it's the telephone. It's Tom's woman who keeps calling. You have a paradox on this page. And we go outside. We can see at the end of Daisy's dock, there's that green light. The green light's going to come up later on, but you learned about it in your notes prior to this. Daisy and Nick are going to sit out here and talk on the porch while Tom and Jordan go inside. They're going to read an article or something. Daisy definitely doesn't look happy, and Nick looks a little concerned. We don't know each other very well, Nick. Even if we are cousins, you didn't come to my wedding. I wasn't back from the war. That's true. Well, I've had a very bad time, Nick, and I'm pretty cynical about everything. So she's going to talk to him, but she's very shallow. She's all about herself. She's concerned he didn't come to her wedding, but, I mean, he was fighting in World War I, so we have to give him a break. I suppose the baby talks and eats everything? Oh, yes. Listen, Nick, let me tell you what I said when she was born. Would you like to hear? Very much. It'll show you how I've gotten to feel about things. Well, she was less than an hour old, and Tom was God knows where. I woke up out of the ether with an utterly abandoned feeling and asked the nurse right away if she was a boy or a girl. She told me it was a girl, and so I turned my head away and wept. All right, I said, I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. You see, I think everything's terrible anyhow. Everybody thinks so, the most advanced people, and I know. I've been everywhere and seen everything and done everything. Sophisticated. God, I'm sophisticated. So, does she sound happy to you guys? Probably not very happy. Although she's gone everywhere and done everything and she thinks she's super sophisticated, she definitely doesn't seem happy. And the first thing she says about her daughter is that she hopes that her daughter is a fool because that's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A fool, meaning like not knowing what's going on around her. Because Daisy's aware of what's going on around her, right? And she's unhappy. She's aware that her husband is cheating on her. She knows who that was on the phone, and she's just simply unhappy. And they walk inside, and here's Jordan and Tom, and they are just reading something from a magazine. To be continued in our very next issue. 10 o'clock, time for this good girl to go to bed. Jordan's going to play in a tournament tomorrow over in Westchester. Oh, you're Jordan Baker. I knew now why her face was familiar. This pleasing, contemptuous expression had looked out of me from many rotograve pictures in the sporting life at Asheville and Hot Springs and Palm Beach. So she's a professional golfer, Jordan. Good night. Wake me up at 8, won't you? If you'll get up, I will. Good night, Mr. Carraway. See you anon. Of course you will. In fact, I think I'll arrange a marriage. Come over of 10, Nick, and I'll sort of, fling you together. You know, lock you up accidentally in the linen closets and push you out to sea in a boat and all that sort of thing. Good night. I haven't heard a thing. She's a nice enough girl. They oughtn't to let her run around the country in this way. Who oughtn't to? Her family. Her family is one aunt about 1,000 years old. Besides, Nick's going to look after her, aren't you, Nick? So here comes Tom again, sort of taking over, making these superior comments about women, saying she shouldn't be allowed to run around like she wants to. And here's Daisy trying to hook Nick and Jordan up. Is she from New York? From Louisville. Our white girlhood was passed there together. Our beautiful white... Did you give Nick a little heart-to-heart talk out on the veranda? He's a little worried about his reputation, right? Did I? I can't seem to remember, but I think we talked about the Nordic race. Yes, I'm sure we did. It sort of crept up on us, and first thing you know, don't believe everything you hear, Nick. I've heard nothing at all. We heard that you were engaged to a girl out west. It's libel. I'm too poor. But we heard it. We heard it from 3 people, so it must be true. It seemed to me that the thing for Daisy to do would be rush out of the house, child in arms, but apparently there were no such intentions in her head. So Nick's thinking she should just leave. He sees them as very shallow and dishonest, but she doesn't leave. She stays there, so he's kind of they're both kind of shallow. As for Tom, the fact that he had some woman in New York was really less surprising than that he had been depressed by a book. So he gets home, Nick gets back to his house, and he's sitting there, and he sees this man outside. Who is that? It is Gatsby, his neighbor. He sees Gatsby, and he says it was Mr. Gatsby himself come out to determine what share was his of our local heavens. I decided to call to him. Mrs. Baker had mentioned him at dinner, and that would do for an introduction. But I didn't call to him, for he gave a sudden intimation that he was content to be alone. He stretched out his arms towards the dark water in a curious way, and as far as I was from him, I could have sworn he was trembling.